6 years after the divorce, I ran into my ex-husband, Marcus, on a street corner while holding my 3-year-old daughter. Marcus stared blankly at the child in my arms. After a long moment, he frowned and said with an accusing tone, "She's almost 6. Why does she look so small and thin?" Huh. He actually thought the child I held was his. Perhaps he believed that my love for him was so profound that, even after he cheated and divorced me, I would have his child in secret. The day Marcus presented me with the ultimatum, I had just found out I was pregnant. The lab results were still clutched in my hand. Unread by him, Marcus sat on the sofa and told me in a cold, hard voice that he had been cheating for 6 months, and the woman outside was now pregnant. He wanted to keep that child, which meant he had to divorce me. I doubted my ears. But before I could ask, Marcus anticipated my question. He looked me in the eye and stated emotionlessly, "You didn't mishear." My heart felt pricked by countless needles. The pain spread rapidly, and I nearly lost my footing. I had never once imagined that my marriage would fail. Marcus was very handsome, but he was distant and slow to warm up. In school, he was a famous science prodigy. Many girls liked him, but only I persistently pursued him for 2 years until he finally agreed to date me. I truly loved him. After we got together, although I was the one who initiated most interactions, he naturally grew accustomed to my presence. We registered our marriage right after college graduation. 3 years of dating, 2 years of marriage, only 5 years together. And he was already bored. I couldn't accept the reality. My hands shaking, I reached for the lab report in my bag, intending to tell Marcus I was pregnant too. Midway, I stopped. Tears fell like broken strings of pearls. What good would revealing it do? If I were truly honest with myself, even if the cheating Marcus agreed to return to the family and continue our life, would I want that? No. I found him repulsive, utterly disgusting. As if afraid I would cling to him, Marcus grabbed his keys and left immediately after announcing the divorce, without sparing me a single glance. He didn't return until the next morning. I had wept on the sofa all night, trying to understand why Marcus had cheated. As a rising star in the corporate world, Marcus managed his family's gradually declining business. Thanks to his involvement, the company had visibly improved over the last 2 years. Because of this, he barely had time to rest. Working all day and attending business dinners every night was his normal routine. How, being this busy, did he find the time to cheat? When Marcus returned, he stood by the entrance, hands in his pockets, watching me silently. He seemed oblivious to my despair. I stared back at him from the sofa. Even though my eyes were so swollen they were nearly slits. After what seemed like an eternity, I heard him say, "Have you cried enough?" Cried enough. Looking back at our 5 years together, in any occasional argument, regardless of who was at fault, I was always the one to compromise first. He had never once comforted me. My one-sided devotion had become pathetic foolishness. I struggled to stand up from the sofa. A subtle pain shot through my lower abdomen, which I chose to ignore. I lifted my chin and asked Marcus, "Why? Why cheat? 7 years of acquaintance. 5 years together." Last night, I fantasized about countless reasons Marcus might give for a divorce. As long as it wasn't cheating, I would forgive him. But he had chosen to cheat. Marcus faintly averted his eyes, a trace of impatience in his expression. "There is no why, Olivia. Our fate has run out. Can't we just part amicably? Our fate has run out. Let's part amicably." In that instant, my heart truly died. Under Marcus' astonished gaze, I nodded. "Fine." I managed to twitch my lips. "Let's divorce." Because of my agreement, the divorce proceeded smoothly. We didn't even notify our parents before getting the divorce certificate, just as hastily as we had obtained the marriage certificate. As the guilty party, Marcus gave me a hefty settlement, including the house. After 2 years of marriage, he packed his things in half a day. I watched him load his luggage into the car and drive away, never looking back. 5 years. I thought even raising a dog would result in some affection. Wouldn't it? Marcus was truly ruthless when he wanted to be. Because of his coldness, I suddenly wanted to see just how wonderful the woman he cheated with was. The one who made Marcus commit the despicable act of infidelity. In the end, I resisted the urge to look. Now that we were divorced, respecting our past relationship meant maintaining distance. The day after the divorce, I received a message from Marcus' sister, Chloe. She asked who the girl was that came home with her brother, followed by 3 laughing emojis. I stared at the text for a long time, finally feeling a sense of release. I replied, "It's your new sister-in-law." Oh. After sending the message, I immediately deleted Chloe's contact. Chloe never liked me. She sent that text specifically to make me uncomfortable, and I refused to give her the satisfaction. I didn't have the courage to be a single mother. So on the 3rd day after the divorce, I scheduled a painless abortion. The geriatric gynecologist frowned and informed me that the procedure required family accompaniment. I had no family in this city, but I had friends. On the day of the surgery, my best friend, Jane, came with me. Just before I entered the operating room, she squeezed my hand. She looked worried. "Liv, are you going to regret this?" Yes. I knew the answer, but the answer had 2 forms, and both led to pain. After being discharged, I quit my job. I came to this city for Marcus, and now I was leaving because of him. Looking back, I had spent the brief youth of my early life revolving almost entirely around Marcus. TSK. No wonder he got tired of me. I valued my health. I rested at home for a month and listed the house with an agent before leaving. 2 hours before I was set to board the plane, Marcus suddenly called. We had been completely cut off for over a month since the divorce. Contact was non-existent, let alone Marcus initiating it. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello." Marcus' flat voice came through the receiver. "You're selling the house." I paused, subconsciously asking, "Can't I?" There was silence on the line. After a long moment, Marcus said coldly, "Do what you want." Then he hung up. Huh. Did Marcus still think I would tolerate his temper like before? Ridiculous. I stared expressionlessly at my phone for a moment. Before leaving, I walked into a nearby business center and canceled my number. I never wanted to have contact with Marcus again. I was born in a small county town where the pace of development was slower and life was not as fast-paced as in the big cities. The moment my 80-year-old grandmother saw me, she grabbed my hand, looked me over repeatedly, and incessantly scolded me for not eating properly and losing weight. I slowed my steps, walking home with her under the setting sun, just like when I was young, seeing my grandmother's gray hair and her hunched back. A sudden, belated wave of sadness washed over me. In all those years I chased after Marcus, did my beloved grandmother repeatedly wait at the village entrance, hoping to see my familiar figure step off the bus. Grandmother raised me, and my relationship with my parents was distant. I hadn't informed them about the divorce before returning. On my 12th day back, the neighbor came to see grandmother, holding her phone. Her look was complicated, and I immediately realized my parents were calling. When grandmother handed me the phone, the woman on the other end was furiously yelling. I hung up expressionlessly. Less than a minute later, the phone rang again. As soon as I said hello, the yelling was even louder than before. I hung up again. After 4 or 5 attempts, the woman on the other end finally calmed down. She stopped shouting and asked for my new number, questioning what I was thinking by getting a divorce without telling her such a major piece of news. I pursed my lips and told her flatly, "I was thinking that it's been nearly 2 months since I divorced, and this time you remembered me sooner than the last time." The line went silent. My family was poor when I was little. My parents decided to venture out after I was born, leaving me with grandmother. Years later, they made some money, but they also had a new child, a younger sister. The reason for the sister was because I wasn't close to them. Later, during summer vacations, they tried to bring me closer to build affection. My sister was 6, and I was 11. At that age, I disdained competing with a small child for toys. But my sister, whom I had barely met, was full of hostility towards me. I picked up the Barbie dolls she had carelessly strewn on the sofa and placed them on the table. When my parents returned from work, those dolls somehow had missing arms and legs. My sister hugged the dolls and cried softly, knowing that this would garner more sympathy. My parents looked at me with complicated eyes. I desperately tried to explain I hadn't done it. I still remember the helplessness of that moment. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Fine. Fine. I know you didn't do it." Then, she turned and said to my father, assuming I couldn't hear, "How did your mother raise this child to be like this?" My father remained silent, clearly assuming I was guilty. Later, they bought more beautiful Barbie dolls and locked them in a storeroom. the key held only by the three of them. I have an allergy to seafood, which grandmother remembers clearly. Seafood never appeared on our table. Before I arrived, grandmother reminded my mother not to let me eat seafood. My mother nodded. Yet, on the third day of my visit, I ended up in the emergency room because of a bowl of seafood porridge. As I struggled to breathe, almost suffocating, I heard my parents arguing noisily through the door. My mother said, "How was I supposed to know she was allergic to seafood?" My father's voice sounded helpless. "Didn't Mom tell you when she visited? She mentioned so many things. How could I remember?" My mother's voice was sharp. "Besides, she's so old now. Doesn't she know what she can or cannot eat? I think she was just being greedy. My sister wanted some, and she didn't want to miss out." And now, they were so angry because they realized Marcus, whom they once looked down upon, had become a rising star in the business world. I had let go of the golden opportunity that could have brought them business favors. Why else would they suddenly remember to call me, since it was such an important matter? My parents actually rushed back that very evening. Trailing behind them was my college-age sister. Our eyes met, and the malicious delight in her gaze hadn't yet fully receded. After 2 years, my parents looked much older. The wrinkles around their eyes were visible even when they weren't smiling, and their nasolabial folds were deeper. My mother's expression, in particular, looked somewhat harsh. My mother ignored grandmother's joyful greeting, instead casting a cold glance at me. Before she even sat down, she snapped, "Olivia, are your wings hardened now? You got divorced without consulting us on such a huge matter." Grandmother was shocked by the news. She looked at my mother, then at me, her lips trembling. But she said nothing. Knowing that my family affection was shallow, I felt no emotional ripples. I simply stroked the calico cat in my arms and remained silent. My mother hated this behavior the most. Her voice suddenly became shrill. "Olivia, is this the attitude you show your own mother? You have absolutely no manners. No wonder your marriage failed." "You." Seeing her words spiraling out of control, my father quickly pulled her sleeve. He tooted, clearly displeased. "You're so mad you're losing your head. How can you talk to the child like that?" My mother knew she had misspoken, but couldn't bring herself to apologize to me. She just snorted and looked away. My father looked at me with an awkward expression, as if expecting me to apologize to my mother. I was the one who was insulted. I should apologize. Why? Are children born indebted to their parents? Grandmother brought tea and quietly told my parents, "Whatever it is, speak nicely to the child." My mother looked at her dismissively. "What do you know? Olivia is only so bold because you spoiled her." She was used to taking her frustration out on grandmother, for the sake of harmony. Grandmother always quietly endured it. I placed the calico cat on the floor, watched it walk away, and then turned to my father, asking, "How did you know I was divorced?" My father chuckled awkwardly. "Marcus called me and your mother. He said he couldn't reach you recently and was a bit worried." I pursed my lips, finding it suddenly amusing. He was the one who cheated, the one who proposed divorce, and the one who claimed our fate had run out. I hadn't clung to him, since we were separated, and without a child to tie us down. I was determined to cut ties completely. But why was he acting like such a jerk now? My mother continued to drone on about how wonderful Marcus was. With every good thing she said about him, she pointedly implied that my character was awful, and Marcus was generous to tolerate me. I held the teacup, sipping slowly. By the time I finished the cup, she had finished bringing up all my past faults, concluding that I must be crazy. She was right. A sane person wouldn't have stayed with Marcus for 5 years of hardship, only to agree to divorce him just as he was starting to enjoy success. No matter my mother's harsh words, I was divorced from Marcus, and there was no turning back. The day I cried all night without receiving a single word of comfort, I realized, life is long. Why waste it on a man who doesn't love me? Finally, my mother concluded that Marcus was skyrocketing in the business world, a new magnate with unlimited potential. I absolutely could not divorce him so easily. They insisted that even in divorce, I should get at least 10 of his company shares. I pressed my throbbing forehead and interrupted their discussion. "Are you done talking?" My parents both turned to look at me. I didn't bother to mince words. "If you're done, leave, while you can still catch a ticket home." My mother's eyes widened. After a long moment, She pointed at me and started cursing again, calling me an ungrateful wretch who couldn't be raised well, and criticizing my cold nature. I glanced at her, stood up, and walked out. Cold nature is hereditary. My cold nature came from them. I couldn't blame anyone else. I checked into a hotel in town. As soon as I settled in, Marcus called. I looked at the 11 familiar digits, hesitated, but didn't answer. Marcus was persistent. The second call came quickly, then the third. When the seventh call came, I finally answered. There was no sound on the other end, only Marcus' steady breathing. I also stayed silent, watching the call duration change. When it went past 2 minutes, I broke the silence. Our fate has run out. Let's part amicably. Those were your words. I don't have the habit of maintaining ties with an ex-husband. Marcus, whatever it is, stop looking for me. Silence persisted. I didn't wait for Marcus to reply. After hanging up, I immediately blocked his number. Jane was right. Trash belongs in the trash can. He wasn't that great when we were married. Now that we're divorced, why is he trying to play the heartbroken romantic? Doesn't he find it hypocritical? I understood my parents. Having climbed out of poverty, they desperately wanted to avoid going back, which was why I was so distant from them. They wouldn't stay here for even a week this time. If I didn't want to see them, the only way was to stay away. I turned off my phone and stayed in the town hotel for 7 days. On the evening of the 7th day, grandmother found me, leaning on her worn cane, shuffling her way. The octogenarian had walked bit by bit from the village to the town, asking for directions. I could picture her searching for me, asking everyone she met. The setting sun cast an orange glow on grandmother's white hair. Her mouth, which had only a few teeth left, smiled at me. Little Liv, they've left. Grandma is taking you home. I suddenly recalled my youth, when she would wait at the village entrance, no matter how late. After my evening classes, I thought I had been through enough to be past the age of crying. But in that moment, I couldn't hold back the tears. After returning home with grandmother, I turned my phone back on. As expected, my parents had sent me numerous lengthy messages on social media, filled with rage and accusations of my immaturity. I didn't bother opening them. Marcus also sent a text from an unknown number, essentially saying that he just wanted to confirm my safety. As we had been married once, he promised not to bother me again and that we should live well separately. He added that he would send me an allowance every month. I didn't take that last line seriously. The 7-figure balance in my bank account gave me confidence. I wanted to see vast landscapes, mountains, and lakes, and witness sunrises and sunsets. During the 2nd year of traveling with grandmother, I met a former schoolmate, Aiden, in a foreign land. I vaguely remembered that he was a brilliant student, but quiet. I hadn't interacted with him much, just knew of his existence. Later, we attended the same university and inevitably saw each other, but only exchanged nods. He was carrying a camera and a simple backpack, also traveling, meeting an acquaintance far from home, plus the fact that we were headed to the same next destination. We decided to travel together. Aiden was a man of few words, respectful of elders and children, observant, and skilled at making grandmother happy. She liked him very much. That night, lying in bed with grandmother, looking at the stars through the skylight, she suddenly said, "That young Aiden is a good boy." I understood grandmother's hint, and offered a dry laugh. He is quite good. When it came to romance, the elderly were often particularly sensitive. But as for Aiden and me, though we were compatible, there was an insurmountable distance. I admired him, but that didn't mean I loved him. I suspected he felt the same. Because of grandmother's age, she needed 2 days to recover after arriving at a new location. I worried this would delay Aiden, constantly suggesting he travel ahead. He didn't refuse my suggestion, only saying, "It's not too late to part ways at the next stop. I want to stay here for a few more days." 2. The misty scenery of Jiangnan, the ancient water town, looked like a painting, surrounded by such beauty. My mood brightened considerably, and I couldn't help but look at Aiden more often. Unlike Marcus' extroverted looks, Aiden's features, though defined, were softened by a strong scholarly air. He seemed like an approachable person at first glance. Noticing my gaze, Aiden smiled gently, the rolling mountains in the distance reflected in his dark eyes, giving him an air of openness. The small ancient paths twisted and turned, The continuous drizzle stirred up layers of thin white mist, making the scene feel like a fairyland. I told grandmother I wanted to go for a walk. Grandmother said she was too old and didn't want to walk much. She sat under a nearby roof eaves with old women her age. They spoke a localized dialect of Mandarin to each other, perhaps not understanding every word, but laughing uncontrollably when the conversation got exciting. They were soon laughing together. I watched them for a while. Footsteps approached from behind me. I turned my head. Through the misty rain, a young man held an oil paper umbrella, walking slowly toward me. He stopped beside me. Refined and composita look I had never seen on him before. Aiden asked if I wanted to walk together. That was exactly what I wanted. We shared the umbrella, strolling through the ancient town of green tiles and black bricks. He spoke little. I initiated most topics, and he listened attentively, answering methodically, as if striving for a textbook answer. It was interesting. It was also a pity that I was long past the age where I could easily fall in love. Aiden and I parted ways at the next destination. After that, I crossed 3 high mountains and 2 large lakes, but never saw him again. Grandmother and I left in early winter and returned in late summer. Grandmother's face was filled with far more smiles. She went out with her cane to chat, telling everyone she met about the vast mountains and rivers she had seen. Several elders her age in the village looked envious and longing, despite grandmother's limited vocabulary. Some people, unable to bear grandmother's happiness, often brought up my marriage after meals. Grandmother's smile would freeze, followed only by a sigh. "We can't control what young people do," she would say, waving her hand. The old woman who raised the topic would give me a knowing look, and the conversation would finally stop. After resting for a few days at home, I started new plans for my life. I had studied civil engineering in college, but I often audited classes in agronomy. In this small rural town, land was abundant. I leased a few acres, planning to grow and sell flowers. In the following weeks, Chloe contacted me a few times via social media, subtly probing whether I had truly forgotten her brother. I had loved him so profoundly. My seemingly easy departure was merely viewed by them as a tactic to retreat and advance. I had wasted so much time and effort on Marcus. The cost of leaving sacrificing those years of youth was indeed high. At the time, the land I leased required setting up plastic greenhouses. I was too busy to deal with her. And eventually, the contact faded. I wasn't so senseless. I knew how to cut my losses quickly. Just as the greenhouses were about to be completed, an old acquaintance arrived at my home. He sat in the courtyard talking to grandmother, his back straight, the sunset casting a soft, handsome glow on his profile. As if sensing my gaze, Aiden turned and looked at me. He offered a slight smile. "I was passing by and thought I'd come to see you." My heart, long dormant, suddenly skipped a beat, then quickly returned to normal. The schoolmate who claimed he was passing by stayed, never mentioning leaving again. Every morning, he would head out with me, his camera in hand, walking behind me and taking pictures. Sometimes I would walk far ahead, and he would still be paused where he was. I would stop and wait for him. When we arrived at our destination, he would show me the landscapes he had captured. Morning mist, curling chimney smoke, interwoven fields, scattered houses hidden between the green hills and blue water. The town had its own unique flavor. I suddenly realized how close we were standing. We looked at each other and quickly looked away. I saw a faint blush spread silently over Aiden's ear tips. I finally realized that something was different. So, on the day the flower seeds sprouted, I invited Aiden for a drink in the flower field's wooden shed, with the alcohol warming my blood. I laid out all the details of my tangled relationship with Marcus. Aiden froze slightly. He was smart enough to understand my unspoken meaning. After a moment, he sighed. Under the dim yellow light, he looked at me intently. "You don't need to say it. I already know everything." But he wouldn't explain how he knew. After the fervent love for Marcus had faded, I wasn't sure if I still had the capacity to love anyone else. But I knew, if I did, it shouldn't be now. The flowers planted in late summer sprouted new shoots in early autumn, forming small buds in deep winter. Aiden's camera documented their entire growth. He transformed from a travel blogger seeking vast landscapes into a gardening enthusiast, and he enjoyed it. Habit is a terrifying thing. I had to admit that after just a few months. I had grown accustomed to Aiden's companionship. Another new year arrived quickly. On the day of the spring equinox, the roses and Chinese roses in the plastic greenhouse bloomed simultaneously. I couldn't tell the difference, so I picked one of each to examine closely in my palm. Aiden silently leaned in, observing the difference between the two flowers with me. We were so close that the fresh scent of soap surrounded me. In a sudden moment of impulse, I asked him, "Aiden, can you tell the difference between a rose and a Chinese rose? Can you tell the difference between a rose and a Chinese rose? Can you tell the difference between me and her?" Aiden, who was constantly online, understood my implied meaning. He paused, then slowly smiled. "Olivia, there never was a her. There is only you." He looked at me intently, his dark eyes seeming to hold boundless affection. In that moment, the entire sea of flowers was less beautiful than his expression. Crash. I heard the loud sound of my high emotional wall collapsing. I wasn't incapable of love. After confirming my feelings, I started a relationship with Aiden at the end of March. Our mode of interaction didn't change with the relationship status. After half a year together, Aiden's personality remained warm, just as when we first met. After March, my flower fields completely opened up online and offline sales, and we no longer faced stagnation. My parents called when they learned I was growing flowers. My mother's voice was sharp and grating. She criticized me for being unaccomplished and destined to rot in the mud for the rest of my life. I didn't know why my biological parents held such malice toward me, so I simply decided not to care about them anymore. I said calmly, "Since you despise me so much, let's just pretend you never gave birth to me." My mother's sharp screeching stopped abruptly. My father quickly took the phone, scolding me for being immature at my age. I laughed. "At least you have one mature daughter." One extra daughter was indeed too many. My father sighed, telling me to calm down before hanging up. I took a deep breath of the flower-scented air. I looked up and saw Aiden striding toward me, holding a bunch of baby's breath. He handed them to me, touching his nose, asking somewhat awkwardly if I liked them. Even though I was outwardly calm, he keenly sensed my distress. I looked down at the flowers, suddenly remembering the meaning of baby's breath. Silent protection. Enduring love. I recalled that whenever I clashed with my parents in the past, Marcus would always look at me with a frown, sometimes even criticizing my stubborn and horrible temper. I leaned in and hugged Aiden. His body visibly stiffened. Then he tightened his arms around my waist. I could hear his heartbeat, growing faster and faster. I suddenly craved this warmth. In our 5th year together, Aiden and my daughter turned 3 and were ready for kindergarten in September. Due to household registration issues, Aiden had to return to H-City. I hadn't planned to go with him, but Jane, my best friend, begged me to visit her. I hadn't seen Jane in over 2 years and genuinely missed her, so I decided to go with Aiden. Business first. Upon arriving in H-City, Aiden and I rushed straight to the local police station. He handled the registration, and since there was a long wait, I took our daughter to stroll around a nearby street corner. Perhaps because she was in a strange place, our daughter was curious and stopped walking, holding up her arms to be carried. Aiden had spoiled this child, and she would tear up if things didn't go her way. I carried her around until I suddenly saw a familiar figure around a corner. I instinctively wanted to leave. The next second, Marcus looked up. His gaze swept past me, then snapped back. Our eyes met across the distance. I hugged my daughter tightly and looked away expressionlessly. The most familiar of strangers, that was us. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Marcus crush his half-smoked cigarette and stride towards me. I didn't want any interaction and turned to leave. Marcus called out from behind, "Olivia." I frowned but finally stopped. Marcus walked quickly toward me. He looked at me, then stared blankly at the daughter in my arms. After a long time, he frowned and said accusatorially, "She's almost 6. Why does she look so small and thin?" Huh. 6 years old. Did Marcus actually believe I would have his child in secret and raise it alone after the divorce? Sensing danger, my daughter's thin arms tightened around my neck. She buried her little head in my shoulder, softly calling for Daddy. I gently patted her back in reassurance, then looked at Marcus. 6 years hadn't changed him much. Meeting again. There were no polite long-time no-see pleasantries, nor any immediate signs of disgust. My affection and resentment for him had dissipated completely over the 6 years. Marcus looked at me. Then his gaze returned to the child. His expression was complicated. Eyes half lowered. Difficult to read. Considering his earlier statement, I could guess his thoughts. He must think my daughter was the child I had aborted. This suggested he didn't know about that child's existence, yet had chosen to make no comment for 6 years. Truly classic Marcus. I suddenly felt like laughing. But before the laughter could surface, deep sorrow overwhelmed me. Look at how blind I was back then. After a moment of silence, Marcus took a small step forward. You. His words were cut off by another voice. Sweetheart. Hearing that voice, my daughter immediately perked up. She lifted her small head and cried Daddy toward Aiden, who had appeared at the street corner. Aiden's gaze lingered on Marcus for a moment. Then he quickly walked toward me. He nodded at Marcus and reached out to take our daughter from my arms. She nestled obediently on his shoulder, occasionally calling out Daddy in her soft, childish voice. Aiden rubbed her little head, a look of extreme fondness on his face. I saw the light in Marcus' eyes, the light that had appeared when he first saw my daughter, slowly shatter. He must have recognized Aiden. A strange feeling of satisfaction swelled in my chest. I said flatly, my daughter just turned 3. Marcus. 6 years have passed. It's time to wake up. Aiden comforted our daughter, then looked back at me, holding our daughter with one arm. He reached out with the other hand to take mine. Let's go. I nodded, naturally taking his hand. We had only walked a few steps when we ran into another familiar face, Sarah. She was an excellent student in school, Marcus' biggest rival throughout his academic career. I remembered she and Marcus used to despise each other. In school, they had no interaction apart from attending the same competitions. Even running into each other, they would mutually turn away in disgust. Sarah was clearly startled to see me. She awkwardly pressed her lips together, avoiding my gaze and looking down at the man she held with her right hand. She was holding a boy around 6 or 7 years old. When the boy saw Marcus, he broke free from her grip, shouting Daddy as he ran toward Marcus. Oh, so that was it. In that instant, there was nothing left for me to misunderstand. I looked back at Marcus. Marcus' lips trembled, but he turned his head, unable to meet my eyes. Aiden squeezed my hand tighter. I turned away nonchalantly and continued walking forward with him. As we passed Sarah, I heard her voice. Liv. Congratulations. I froze, then let out a cold laugh. I should thank you for making it happen. Huh. The mistress who intervened in my marriage. What right did she have to pretend to be sincere in front of me? Let the one who leaves me be gone forever. Yesterday's days cannot be retained. After returning from H-City, our life as a family of 3 resumed its comfortable rhythm, filled with sweetness. About 2 weeks later, I looked up while pruning flowers and saw Aiden holding our daughter, his face shadowed and dark. Looking out the window, he was always a gentleman. After years together, this was the first time I had seen that expression. I followed his line of sight. A familiar figure was standing outside the window. Marcus was in the courtyard talking to grandmother, his eyes fixed on our window. No wonder Aiden looked so upset. But why was Marcus suddenly here? Aiden soothed our daughter, then glanced at me, saying, "Don't come out," before pushing the door open and stepping out himself. Through the window, I watched him talk to Marcus. The 2 young men, of similar age, exuded different temperaments, each with his own merits. I ignored Marcus and looked at Aiden. Once my gaze settled on him, I couldn't look away. This antagonistic, fiercely protective Aiden was a side I had never seen. I watched him for a while, unknowingly curling my lips into a smile. When Aiden pushed the door open and came back inside, my smile hadn't faded. He froze visibly, his eyes darkening. He asked meaningfully, "So happy?" Knowing he misunderstood, I explained frankly, "Yes. I've never seen you show such strong hostility toward anyone before." Aiden's expression softened slightly upon hearing this. He lifted our daughter, who was playing with blocks, and wrapped his arm around me, using her as a shield. I heard his voice near my ear. "Go talk to him clearly. Don't be foolish." I stood under the grape trellis in the courtyard, facing Marcus. In just 2 weeks, he looked noticeably haggard. Perhaps he rushed here. He hadn't even shaved his stubble, and his clothes were wrinkled in several places. This wasn't the Marcus I remembered. He looked at me without speaking. The air was silent. Grandmother, unable to bear the tension, stood up with her cane, saying the courtyard was stuffy and she wanted to go for a walk. After grandmother was gone, I broke the silence first. Marcus, even though so many years have passed, I still have one question for you. A flicker of hope ignited in Marcus' dead eyes. I guessed he thought I was going to ask if he had ever loved me. Huh. How superficial. Marcus cleared his throat, his voice still hoarse when he spoke. Go ahead. I saw the tall figure at the window raise his lip. I took a step closer and asked quietly, was the stolen meal delicious? Marcus froze in place, his expression cracking inch by inch. His lips moved several times, but he couldn't utter a single word. A feeling of profound satisfaction surged in my heart. Marcus' knuckles, gripping the trellis, turned chalky white. I'm sorry. He offered an apology 6 years too late, then added, I thought. He couldn't finish the rest of the sentence. Thought what? Thought that my love for him was so deep that even after the divorce, I would secretly give birth to his child and raise it painstakingly. But Marcus, no one in this world is born indebted to anyone else. You are past 30. Why don't you understand this? I remained silent, looking at him indifferently. Marcus met my gaze, his eyes bloodshot. Finally, he offered one last sentence. Olivia, you probably won't believe me, but I truly regret it. I paused, then slowly smiled. So what? No one knew better than me that Marcus wasn't truly regretful. He was just uncomfortable seeing me live happily, even more so than when I was with him. In other words, even if Marcus was truly regretful, so what? What gave him the right to hurt me and then, years later, show up telling me he regretted it? Don't talk to me about the prodigal son returning. I despise the idea of a prodigal son returning more than anything. After 6 years, Marcus could still comfortably assume I would have his child, relying solely on the unique favoritism I once showed him. His inability to accept loss was inevitable. I was ultimately more open-minded than he was, and I had no interest in further conversation. I merely urged him to leave soon. Marcus left my house, but didn't leave the small town. He found a hotel nearby and stood watching my house from a distance every morning. Aiden's face grew darker each day, though he tried hard not to show his anger in front of me and our daughter. Finally, one night, Aiden quietly dressed and slipped out while I was asleep. After he left, I got up and secretly followed him. Sure enough, Aiden had arranged to meet Marcus. I crouched under the window, eavesdropping. After a silence, Marcus spoke first. Before coming here, Sarah told me everything. You had a hand in how she and I met again. My heart jumped, but I quickly calmed down. Oh, so that was the point that broke Marcus. Aiden remained silent. Then, I heard Marcus grinding his teeth. That was a truly excellent tactic. Silence again. I carefully stood up and peered into the room through a crack in the window. So what? Aiden stood in the shadow of the fluorescent light. I couldn't see his expression from this angle, but his cold voice carried clearly. Love must be earned, mustn't it? Aiden's voice was filled with sarcasm. I started liking Olivia when I was 18. I liked her more at 28, and now at 32. My affection for her only grows. But you're different. You have unstable genes in your bones. If there hadn't been Sarah, there would have been another woman. Olivia's life with you is hell. When the opportunity presented itself, why shouldn't I fight for it? What if Olivia finds out? Marcus' voice was laced with expectation. If Olivia knows you manipulated her marriage, are you sure she won't resent you? For a moment, Aiden stepped out of the dark shadow, his expression indistinct. The next second, he retreated back into the darkness. The following day, when I saw Marcus again, I walked straight toward him. Before he could speak, I went straight to the point. I heard everything you two said last night. A trace of hopeful light burst in Marcus' eyes. He pursed his lips. Liv, Sarah and I never were. It was all. I interrupted him with a cold, hard voice. Our marriage was already unhappy. You never cared about me. Your parents and sister never accepted me, thinking I married above my station. We have both built new families in the 6 years since the divorce. Why did you travel all this way to find me? Do you think that's fair too? I stopped myself and sneered. Marcus, we were married once. Don't make me look down on you. The last flicker of light in Marcus' eyes extinguished completely. Our fate has run out. Let's part amicably. I returned Marcus' words, exactly as he had said them. In the distance, Aiden was waving at me, holding our daughter. I lifted my lips into a smile and strode past Marcus toward them. With our daughter between us, Aiden and I looked at each other and smiled in unison. Holding our daughter's small hands, one on each side, we slowly walked into the depth of the flower field. The sun was still shining brightly. Every day remained beautiful. The end of one marriage is not misfortune, but the beginning of a journey toward the next happiness. As humans, we will always face various hardships. You just need to hold fast to your original intention. Someone will be willing to cross layers of fog and run toward you. Extra. Marcus' perspective. The glare of the sun through the window hit my eyes. I woke up from my hangover, my head throbbing. The phone beside my pillow kept ringing obnoxiously. The name Sarah flashed repeatedly on the screen. A surge of irritation rose, and I slammed the phone against the wall. It shattered into pieces. The world returned to silence. I pinched my brow. Olivia's words still echoed in my ears, every single one pushing me away. They were my own words. But hearing her return them to me realized they were utterly soul-piercing. 6 years divorced. We both had new families. We shouldn't be bothering each other. But I couldn't control myself. When I hadn't seen her, even after learning we might have had a child, the impulse to find her never fully materialized into action. I knew Olivia loved me. Deeply. Deeply. The one who is loved is always brazen. What if I cheated first? I still felt brazen. Until 6 years later, when I saw Olivia again, and saw Aiden standing beside her. Or perhaps I should call him Perry. No one knew about my shameful motivations. And no one would know that the only reason I coincidentally appeared in Olivia's life was because I first realized Perry, now Aiden, had feelings for her. I couldn't understand it. How could someone as arrogant as Perry marry a divorced woman? The year I met Perry, he was still Perry, taking his father's surname. Perry was a top student, gentle and polite. He was only a year older than me, yet he was the other people's child praised by most parents in the neighborhood, including my own. Initially, I just saw Perry as the neighbor's older brother. Unlike other kids, I didn't idolize him, nor did I dislike him, until one day, my father looked at me, sweaty after a day of playing, and sighed, saying something I still clearly remember. If only you could be as sensible as Perry. That was the first time I heard my stern, rigid father praise someone. And that person wasn't me. A feeling of jealousy quietly sprouted when I didn't realize it. It spread exponentially when my mother admiringly praised Perry's excellent grades to his mother. And when my sister told Perry, "Perry, you are so nice. Much better than my brother." I started paying attention to Perry. I discovered his life was simple. Study, gardening, and cats. He liked sitting under the garden tree reading, his upper body in the shade, his legs bathed in sunlight. His fat orange cat would nap lazily on his chest, squinting. Sunlight, flowers, a teenager, a fat cat, shade under a tree. It looked idyllic. Such a quiet, well-behaved boy. No wonder adults adored him. I restrained my nature and began consciously or unconsciously trying to emulate Perry, adopting his temperament, his style of dress. I knew I was just an imitation. I hated that part of myself, yet I couldn't stop the imitation. Until I was 16, and Perry was 17. On the way home from school, Perry saw a small calico kitten that had climbed a tree and was afraid to come down. The tall teenager, careful not to scare the kitten, took off his jacket and held it open, signaling the kitten to jump down, promising to catch it. The little kitten cried anxiously, too afraid to jump. The boy and the cat were at a standstill. I scoffed at this, thinking Perry was overly sentimental. About 10 minutes later, the kitten finally jumped, and Perry caught it squarely in his embrace. I didn't realize a passerby had captured that moment on camera. Later, walking slightly behind, I saw the kitten's owner, a delicate-looking girl. Perhaps because my back looked too similar to Perry's, the kitten's owner mistook me for him and ran over to thank me. The 16 or 17-year-old girl had clear, transparent eyes, but I didn't intend to take credit for something I didn't do. I didn't think I was that despicable, until one day, I saw that same girl handing a bottle of mineral water to Perry after a basketball game. Perry took the water, stared at her retreating figure for a moment, blinked quickly twice, and slightly curved his lips. I understood Perry perhaps better than he understood himself. I knew that was a sign of interest, or even affection. In all those years, it was the first time I had seen Perry show interest in a girl, stealing the person Perry liked. A sense of despicable triumph surged in my heart, quickly becoming uncontrollable. Getting together with Olivia was smoother than I expected. During our time together, I saw the look of loss in Perry's eyes more than once. This only solidified my decision to stay with Olivia. Finally, the year Perry turned 18, his father's illegitimate son showed up. Perry's mother was headstrong. She couldn't tolerate the insult, but her excellent upbringing prevented her from resorting to shouting. Perry's mother left the family, taking Perry with her. I was finally free from his shadow. For some reason, I didn't break up with Olivia. She had a good nature, much more interesting than I had imagined. And she was the first girl I had ever dated in my 17 or 18 years. I couldn't distinguish whether my feelings for her were genuine or rooted in that initial spiteful bet. It was a natural progression. We married after graduation. I honestly intended to spend my life with Olivia at first. I don't want to think about why that changed later. Ultimately, I failed her. After the divorce, we should have gone our separate ways. So why did I chase her all the way here? Perhaps Olivia was right. Even in divorce, I couldn't stand seeing her with another man. Especially not Perry, the man I had painstakingly tried to avoid. The day before I planned to return, Sarah and my sister found their way here. They couldn't find me, so they naturally sought out Olivia. My sister was used to being domineering toward Olivia. When I arrived, she was verbally abusing Olivia, relentlessly mocking her for being unsophisticated and shamelessly interfering in someone else's new family after the divorce. Olivia's expression didn't change at all. She glanced calmly at my sister and Sarah. The leashes couldn't hold your dogs in place, so they ran to someone else's door to bark. My sister's face turned livid. Before she could speak, Olivia smiled slightly and looked at Sarah. Why are you hiding in the back, pretending to be a saint? Who is the tramp who broke up someone else's family? You know best, don't you? Sarah's face was completely pale. Olivia saw me standing behind them. She sighed, seemingly finding the argument meaningless. The world runs on karma, and it never fails. Sarah, whether you believe it or not, the pain I suffered then, you will surely experience 10 times over. Sarah had her back to me, so I couldn't see her expression. Olivia gave the final order. Marcus, take them away from here. I don't want to see any of you ever again. Aiden held her hand, and they disappeared into the vast, colorful flower field. I watched their retreating figures, a crushing sadness in my heart. Sarah approached me, her face dark. She wanted to vent the anger she had suffered from Olivia onto me. What? Are you enjoying yourself too much here to leave? I gave her a scornful look. I remembered her intentional appearance during Olivia and my marriage. It was Sarah who confessed my despicable act of claiming to have saved the cat to Perry. A feeling of disgust lingered. I turned and walked away. For the sake of that initial spiteful competition, I lost the girl who walked through my entire youth with me. In the end, I lost to Perry, forever losing the one I loved.